A new parenting alert, raising concerns about how what your children watch affects the way they think and feel about gender. And Marya is here with the details. And you spent some time with some families, Marya?
I did, yeah. A group of parents and kids who spoke really candidly about the gender stereotypes they're seeing. This new survey finds parents say those images shape what their kids think it means to be a boy or a girl. Everything from how they look and talk, even to the kinds of jobs they aspire to. From their favorite TV shows,
The Queen,
to big screen blockbusters. TV shows and movies are a big part of our kids' lives. But just how is all of this screen time affecting how boys and girls see themselves? This morning, an eye-opening new survey shedding light on how stereotypes in movies and on TV impact the way kids think about gender, sexuality, and diversity.
Parents feel that TV and movies are incredibly influential on their kids' perceptions.
The survey finding parents say movies and TV heavily influence their children. More than half of respondents saying they're especially concerned about their children seeing sexualization of girls and women, violence against girls or women, and boys or men shown as hyperviolent or aggressive.
Oh, hello there. I'm Haziq.
And I am Nurul Hidayah binti Burhanuddin.
Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Nur Hanani.
In our video today, the content will be presented as follows. I will be introducing all of you to our topic, as well as tackle the first issue, which is sexual harassment and sexual representation.
And I am going to talk about the second and third issue, which is balancing work and caring responsibility, and also workplace discrimination, together with their examples of literature work.
I will be your special tour guide to explore the third and last issue faced by women in media and literature, which is sexualization of women.
So, without further ado, let's jump into our topic. A study was conducted by Ipsos, a market and public research organization, in 2018 across 27 countries to identify the issues faced by women in those countries. The study revealed that top 3 issues faced by women globally are sexual harassment, sexual violence, and physical violence. At the same time, Malaysian women are facing the same issues as well, but with more stress on the issues of balancing work and carrying responsibilities, as well as gender stereotyping. They are also facing problems with support for pregnant women and new mothers, as well as the lack of women in leadership roles in Malaysia. The rest of the top 10 issues include workplace discrimination and domestic abuse. These are among of the issues faced by women in Malaysia and as well as women globally. And today, we will be discussing and looking on these issues and relate them with English literature. So, the first issue that we will be discussing on is sexual harassment and sexual representation. So, as we all know, sexual harassment has been a concerning issue for a very long time. Even in Malaysia, every year, we would hear hefty amounts of sexual harassment cases being covered in the local news. This year, Malaysia was shocked with the news of a da'i being caught in sex scandals. Several news reports revealed that multiple females had fallen as victims for his sexual misconduct. There are several concerning issues regarding this news. The first is the fact that he had done this multiple times without being caught. The second is the fact that he was a celebrity preacher, someone who was supposed to be a God-fearing man. Several studies have been made to explore the causes of sexual harassment in workplace settings. A study by NAP revealed that organizations had more effect on the tolerance of sexual harassment as compared to individuals. According to NAP, sexual harassment is a social construct, and as such, is governed not only by individual propensities, but also organizational climate and its tolerance to sexual harassment. The research revealed that sexual harassment would likely to prolong if the organization or the surrounding climate had high tolerance towards sexual harassment. If the company turns a blind eye over sexual harassment of their staffs, then it is very likely that the situation would continue to occur. From here, we can see that the climate plays a big role. If the people around them are tolerant towards sexual harassment, then it will prolong, because no one, I repeat, no one except the victim is fighting against this immoral act. And when it is prolonged, then the climate, the surrounding people will start to become very tolerant, and soon enough it will become a norm. And that's the situation in the real world. Sexual harassment and sexual representations are also represented in English literature works. To compare this with English literature, this situation can be related to the story A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen on the character Nora. Nora was a victim of her surroundings, a male-dominated world that treated female as property. Nora was shaped by her father and her husband to become someone who was submissive. Even though Nora was not sexually harassed literally in the story, but she was shaped to become someone who would submit totally under man's superiority and dominance. She was the representation of women of that time, submissive towards male figures completely, to the extent of being manipulated and used. Nora was shaped and conditioned to think that she was weak and incapable of living alone. Her father and her husband conditioned her to believe that she had no power to life. Everything was done by someone else. It's either her father, her husband, or her maid. And that continuous enforcement left a message in her mind that she needed someone to depend on to do stuff for her. And this had made her become very dependent. Her husband also called her various nicknames, in which all the names were coincidentally praised. Squirrels, lark, and all these animals are often praised than predators. They are the weaker ones in the food chain. Thus, the names were used to constantly enforce the false thought on her that she was weak. He didn't call her a lion, he called her a squirrel. From here, they prevented her from empowering herself and letting herself become independent, because if she became independent, then she would no longer need men. She was also shaped to think that she was responsible of making her husband happy, and she needed to serve him and be completely obedient to him. As a result of this thinking enforcement, she was in constant need to please her husband in every possible way, serving him, taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, and even tolerating her husband's actions, even though they were degrading, name-calling her and treating her like an incompetent child. And last but not least is the fact that the society at that time upheld such belief, thinking that men had the right to dictate women's life. And because everyone supported that belief, it became a norm, and everyone was subjected to follow such belief. In short, she was conditioned with the mindset of being completely submissive to men, to the extent that if she was sexually abused by male figures in her life, she would probably just let it happen and tolerated it. So this is the sexual representation of women in literature. So another example or another story that we can discuss is a short story entitled Marya, written by Sheikh Husna Azhari. It is a good story to represent men that are sexually driven and use excuses to let themselves get away with their immoral acts, just like the sex scandal mentioned earlier. So, some of us may recall this story as we have learned it in our foundation year. It is a story of an imam who was sexually attracted to a widow named Marya. I repeat, sexual attraction, and it was not affection. The imam was the so-called guardian of modesty and moral enforcer of the village. But even then, he succumbed to his own lust. In the story, he was very manipulative in justifying his reasons to marry Marya. He misinterpreted hadith and blamed her first wife for being infertile. Oh, the hadith allowed it. Oh, we didn't have children, so it's my wife's fault. She was infertile. So using these both reasons, he justified himself and believed that he was doing the right decision, when in fact it was wrong. He was lucky that he had good reputation as an imam, but because if the villagers knew what was in the imam's head, he would be nothing more than just another Romeo in the village. So that was how sexual harassment are also represented, but more subtly in English literature. Now, I will pass the floor to the next presenter.
How do I entertain a packed house? With my new Electrolux appliances. Now I can cook the roast for the dinner party and the mac and cheese for the sleepover. Simmer the chocolate sauce, toss Jack's toy, serve the gummy bears, then the apple juice at the perfect temperature, be the charming co-host, clean the stemware perfectly, and end the night looking for monsters under the bed. Introducing Electrolux with wave touch controls and an induction hybrid cooktop that boils water in 90 seconds. You can be even more amazing.
Now, for the second issue, I am going to be talking about the balancing work and caring responsibility for women. So first, we are going to look at these definitions by Romanian language. The same definition is actually used in Merriam-Webster dictionary website. So let's take a look at the first one, which is man. So according to the dictionary, man is an adult male human being, person full of energy and determination, a grown man, statesman, notable figure which is in a leading position, or married male person considered in relation to the woman who became his wife. Next, we are going to look at the definition for woman. So the first one is female or wife. Figuratively and ironically skirt, a woman with a child, a woman who is a servant or personal attendant, a woman who is extremely fond of or devoted to something specific, or woman of the streets, see prostitute. Okay, so based on these two definitions, we can already see that women are always portrayed to be more nurturing and accommodating, especially with their families. Thus, they are always expected to be the ones who are responsible with the house chores. Now, it is interesting to note from the perspective of gender gap, the definitions provided by them are very different, as we can see here on the screen. So what we notice is that women are considered to be inferior to men, and the woman is seen only as his shadow. Example of literature work is by Friedrich Nietzsche. So Friedrich was a famous German philosopher. However, he was always known for his negative attitude towards women. So Friedrich wrote specifically about his views of women in section 7 of Human, All Too Human, which seems to hold women in high regard. However, his other comment or his overall attitude toward women is a little bit different. For instance, in Beyond Good and Evil, section 239, there was one of his quote which said, "What inspires respect for women and often enough even fear is her nature, which is more natural than man's, the genuine, the cunning suppleness of a beast of prey, the tiger's claw under the glove, the naive of her egoism, her unadaptability and her inner wildness, the incomprehensibility, scope and movement of her desires and virtues." So here we can see that Friedrich only see women as a human being who has more empathy towards other, where he sees women as someone who should be taking care of the children, for example, or being more should be more respectful or should be more responsible, just like his quote earlier. Also, another quote of his, which is from The Will to Power, 864, second German edition of 1906. The writing include, "Women, one half of mankind is weak, typically sick, changeable, inconstant. She needs a religion of weakness that glorifies being weak, loving and being humble as divine, or better, she makes the strong weak. She rules when she succeeds in overcoming the strong. Women has always conspired with the types of decadence, the priest against the powerful, the strong, the man." So here we can see that in this quote, he defined men as powerful and strong, while women is weak, loving and humble. So here we can see that how is this affecting to women in society, where when people believe that women should be able to take care of the children or should do house chores, should be devoted to their husband, how can women be able to work, because they are already occupied enough with house chores, so it is impossible for them to have an occupation, a career. Or maybe they do have a career like most women in today's society, but they would be more stressful or they would be they wouldn't have time for themselves because they are too busy in house chores. So another example we can see is that when their husband maybe taking care of their children for one day, only one day, and then all of the wife's friend maybe would be like, oh, your husband taking care of the children, they babysit your children, that's really nice, as if that is something very rare to do, or maybe very weird thing to do, even though those children are his as well. But people see this as a weird thing because apparently taking care of the children should be only women's job. So this is why representation of women in being domestic servants should end now, so that people won't have these stereotypes anymore. Okay, so there is also another example of literature, which is so the next example of literature that can be found that can relate to our second issue today, which is balancing work and career responsibility, is the short story or a play titled The Stronger by August Strindberg. Okay, so in this story, the women are always portrayed to be submissive and devoted to their husband. For example, Mrs. X in this story, which is also the main character, and they are also taught to be loyal and serve as domestic servants to their families. Okay, so in the text, women are always portrayed to be submissive and devoted according to society standard. For example, Mrs. X criticizes Miss Y, who does not live and performs her gender role. So this is one of the dialogue in the play, which is, "Do you know, it worries me to see you this way, alone in a cafe and on Christmas Eve too." Mrs. X said that Miss Y does not fit the society's frame because she does not fulfill the gender role of women for her age. So the only thing that she condemned on Miss Y is that how Miss Y is not yet has a partner or married or even children, and how Mrs. X how Mrs. X is actually proud of her family and of how she believed that she is a successful wife and a mother. And she also criticizes Miss Y on how can she be on her own, like living her own life. She believes that is wrong, and she should be taking care of her family, you know, like make her own family. So also in this story too, Mrs. X was not working because, as we can see, that she really enjoys, or maybe she doesn't, but she shows to Miss Y on how she really enjoys on being a housewife. And this is also another example of women representation in literature, on how we can read this and women may believe that, oh, maybe being housewife is the best life after all. Maybe we shouldn't work, or maybe we should focus more on being a housewife, whereas it's not true. Okay.
I don't take dictation. I won't sharpen pencils. I can't file. My boss calls me indispensable.
Miss Jones,
Just a minute.
will you make a copy of this?
I push the button on the Xerox 914. I make perfect copies of whatever my boss needs by just turning a knob.
So the next issue that we will be discussing in this presentation that is closely related to the previous issue is lack of women in workplace in general, and also we are going to talk about specifically in the leadership roles as well. So aside that, we are also going to be discussing about the discrimination that women have to go through when they are working, especially in a male-dominated area. So for the lack of women in workplace, firstly, according to a political.co website, so Malaysia actually has made great progress in increasing our female participation in workplace from 46.4% in 2009 to 55.2% in 2018. Now, even though the percentage is only slightly higher than 50%, however, we still actually record one of the lowest rates among East Asian countries. So, for the women who are working, the ratio of women to men in leadership status, women only made about 26 over 100, like 26 women to every 100 men are working in the leadership positions such as senior officials or managers. Okay, so next, according to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report 2018, Malaysian women actually performs really well on education, and we can see this in many universities which usually have more female students than male. So this is what we want to explore on why women are really lacking in workplace, even though they are particularly well in education. Okay, so aside from that issue, for the women who are working, however, they sometimes receive workplace discrimination just because of their gender. So according to Randstad website, which is a global study by Catalyst, showed that women held only 29% in senior management roles in 2019, with female board representation is very low in Asia. So like for example, 15.2% in Singapore and only 2.6% in South Korea. Whereas in Malaysia, the discrimination that we received is that according to the 2018 Salaries and Wages Survey Report launched by the Statistics Department, DOSM, so the average male employees had a median salary of 2,342 ringgit per month, which is RM 115 higher than women, where women only receive around 2,227 per month, even though they are in the same position within the same workplace. So we are going to look further into this discrimination. So this is a survey based on gender equality in the Malaysian workplace 2019 preliminary report. So here we have the result of negative impact of having children on career prospect of those who have children. Okay, so they are separated by gender. So first, we are going to look at the promotion opportunities. So about 29.7 women who have children believe that it affected them negatively, okay, while men, only 9.7% said that having children impact their promotion opportunities. For salary, they are about equally the same, with only difference of 3%. So we're going to look at next. This is the same for quality of work. They both believe that having children only impacted them for a little bit, like just a little bit of percentage. So undertaking further training is also around the same, only 6% difference. So for ability to travel for work, so 69.4% of women believe that they are not able to travel for work because they have children, while only 48.5% of men believe that having children will going to be affected their ability to travel for work. So again, like I said, this is because women are often taught to take care of their families, and traveling for work will be hard for them. Okay, so the next one is colleagues' perception of my commitment to work. So 27% of women believe that their colleagues have negative perception towards their work just because they have children. However, for men, only 16% of them believe that having children will going to be negatively impacted them. So from here we can see that women are always ridiculed for having children, maybe because sometimes even their leader or their colleagues believe that they cannot give their all to the career because they have children to take care of, because they believe that women cannot give the best work attitude, because they can sometimes be distracted by children or house chores. So as you can see here, there are a huge gap between men and women, even though they both have children, and yet people see more negatively towards women, even though they are both equally the same. They both have children. So this is what we want to avoid by changing the women representation in literature and media. Okay, so what is the reason behind this discrimination? So first, women are always portrayed to be less intelligent or more emotional than men are. Many men actually still believe this, and unfortunately some women believe this as well. They believe that they cannot control their emotions, and that they might become a bad leader, or that they cannot do their work perfectly. Also, not to mention, their responsibilities of taking care of their children can also impact their promotion opportunities, so which might make them to lose the job, and they cannot climb up to a higher position. So we are going to look at more in this for the example of literature. So we are going to discuss more about this. So the first example of literature that we are going to look at for this issue is Crazy Rich Asians, the movie version, not the novel version. So the first example would be Astrid quit her job to not make her husband feel threatened. So as we all know, Astrid is a really rich woman, and she also has her she also do really well in education, and yet she admitted in the last scene that she quit her job, and this is because she didn't want to make her husband to feel any less of a man than her, because like we established earlier that people always see women to be the gender of more or less intelligent than men, and which is why I should believe that that is the right thing to do, and her husband actually liked that decision, and because he believed that even her wealth is already threatening enough, so he didn't want his wife to be working as well, because that might make him to be like less intelligent than him. And the next example would be Rachel, who was made fun of by Alistair and Eddie in their in the bachelor party. So Rachel is a professor, economic professor, and yet the Alistair and Eddie, they both only see her as not worthy to their whole family, because she isn't rich, she is not a rich person. And then they proceed to make a sexual remark on Rachel, one of the quote being what Rachel brought to the table, and Alistair replied with, "Oh, I know, small tits." So this is why it is important for literature to represent women in a better way, because people might see this and believe that women are not capable of being respected, even though both of them are really good in education. Like they proved themselves. Rachel is a professor, and Astrid graduated really well, and yet they still made fun of, like they were both not respected. So this is what we need to improve on more in women representation. Okay, so the next example would be the Colonist Lady. So this is a short story, and one of the example of women representation is the colonel only see Evie, which is his wife. He only saw her as his trophy wife with her creamy skin and her trim figure. So, and then Evie proceed to shock her husband with the fact that she has the ability to compose a beautiful poem and later be a good poet throughout the story. So in one of the excerpts is when Henry Dashwood, the best critic in town, stated that I simply bowled over by her book. It's so fresh and original, very modern without being obscure. The colonel only thought this was just as garbled nonsense, and then when his wife's book got more attention and became more popular, he decided to purchase one and reread her wife's book. But instead of being proud or being respectful towards his wife, he decided to believe that Evie was actually cheating on him with a younger man, because he simply cannot believe that that was all Evie's original idea. He believed that that was actually happening, and that is why Evie was able to write such stories. So here again we can see that the colonel didn't believe that his wife can be successful, because he only see her as a wife who should be who only serves towards him. And therefore the title of this short story is The Colonist Lady, the wife being an item, such kind of like an item, or possessive towards the colonel. And yet at the end of the story, the phrase changes to Evie's husband George. So as we can see here, again, women representation is important. During the beginning of the story, the colonel only see Evie as not intelligent and not on his level, and yet at the end of the story we can see that Evie can be successful on her own without her husband's support. And this is why with what is going to motivate women even more to continue on their workplace setting, or even continue to be a higher position in their workplace setting. So it is really important to have a better women representation.
First, we have to know what is sexualization. According to American Psychological Association, or APA, sexualization occurs when a person's value comes only from her or his sexual appeal or behavior. It's like our interests, our value, our abilities, our intelligence are absent from sexualized message and image. Next, a person is held to a standard physical attractiveness with being sexy. It's like women have unrealistic perfect sexualized body types. For example, a small face, small nose, big eyes, cute mouth, something like that. And lastly, a person is sexually objectified. This means that a person is made into an object or thing for a sexual pleasure of others, as opposed to being portrayed as a person with the capacity independent action and decision making. That is very, very sad. With media options available today, they create the potential for massive exposure to products that sexualize women and girls and teach girls that women are sexual objects. For example, we can see from the series in the television, the advertisement, the music, the lyrics, and even from the magazine. And according to Growholz and King in 1997, 78% of the harassment focused on the demeaning terms for women or on sexualization of their bodies. For example, these people mention the words such as bimbo, a fox, or blondie, and some of them even focus on women's bodies or body part. They mention the words jugs, cookware, and canned goods, or something like that. Moving on to the example. In Water 2005, a movie that portrayed the journey of some widows in India during 1938, Kalyani has been portrayed as sexual object when she ought to be a mistress to support the ashram. According to the tradition, widows in India will only wear white saris and bald their heads. However, we can notice some differences immediately, as Kalyani is the only widow who has long shiny hair in the ashram. And as we know, women's hair can be symbolized as their pride or even a symbol of beauty. So, Kalyani's long hair, on the contrary, is a sign of her miserable life as a mistress for the old man. Next, when Kalyani is dead, Chuya, 8 years old widow, has been tricked by Madhu Didi, who tried to prostitute her, replacing Kalyani. At the end of the movie, we can say that women in water has been portrayed as the objects to pleasure the man. Second example is a famous play from Shakespeare, which is Romeo and Juliet in 1597. In Act 2, Scene 1, Romeo, a best friend, is sexualizing Rosalind's body and seeing her purely as an object for sexual gratification. In modern English, he stated, Rosalind's bright eyes, by her high forehead and her red lips, by her fine feet, by her straight legs, by her trembling tights, and by the regions right next to her tights. And besides that, Juliet's nurse made many sexual jokes and makes fun of women. She mentioned, "You take your beauty sleep now. Get yourself a week's worth of sleep. Tomorrow night, I bet Count Paris won't let you get much rest." In conclusion, it's safe to say that all too often the media or literature sends the message that girls should be pretty, not powerful, and noticed, not respected. And this is incredibly harmful, not just for the girls, but to our culture at large. Women and girls can and do work together to protest sexualization towards them and help each other to know what they want, also teach them how to make social change, especially in their own communities. That's all from us. Thank you for listening.